Home. For each of us, that word conjures up different images, different memories, different feelings. For some of us, when we think of home, we think of a place where we dwell with family. We might think of our church home as a place where we also dwell with family. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, many members expressed a desire to come home to our building at Shepherd of the Cross. Understandably so, there is something to be said about being in a space where we connect with Christ and with our church family. But in the beginning of 2021, we could not gather with one another in person, and we could not gather in our church building. So if that was the case, was it just this past April that we finally came home? Some might say as such. But as we explored during our Advent Christmas season, home is not so much a place as it is an experience, a feeling, a relationship. And as followers of Jesus, our home, ultimately, is Jesus Christ.
So if Jesus is our home, and we dare to claim that Jesus has created many dwelling places in which we can connect to God, then did we have to wait until April to come home together? Of course not. Was it only when we gathered at our church building that we were at home with Christ and with one another? It sounds silly to suggest as such, yet it can be all too tempting to fall into that mode of thinking. For so long, the church served as a central meeting space, a center where everyone went and where everyone knew each other's names. But as many of you are aware, church today isn't what church was 15 years ago, let alone 50 years ago. For sure, there may be some grief that accompanies that reality as we let go of previous models of being church together. But, dear shepherds, God continues to draw us home to himself. God's mission is still thriving. And God is creating more and more dwelling places for us and our neighbors to come home to Christ.
How? Well, in the past year, it happened in a multitude of ways. It happened while we were still worshiping online. As we dove into Lent with the help of Lenten bags assembled by our worship and music team. It happened as adults gathered online for the Alpha series and summer solstice conversations, leading to conversations of faith and life. Later in the spring and summer, it happened again when we gathered on the lawn for worship and enjoyed treats outside. It happened as our youth painted an apartment owned by MCSA. As rocks were painted to spread around the community. And it happened as crafts were created to sell as a part of the Crafting for a Cause event, benefiting the Mississippi Valley Child Protection Center. Sparked by renewed conversations about collaboration, it also happened through shared ministry between Shepherd, Grace, and Zion. From opportunities like Trunk or Treat to family faith nights and a new joint high school youth group. In all these experiences, God was drawing us to come home to himself and to come home to each other. Some of those experiences were here at Shepherd. This year, we recognize that to be good stewards of our buildings and grounds, one dwelling place in which we can come home to God, we needed to do some work on our property. That meant making investments in our building, our physical home. We did so by adding a sidewalk to offer a second exit from the sanctuary and creating a garden in which we can plant shrubs in honor of our confirmants. We did so by purchasing and installing a new projector and sound system in the sanctuary and upgrading our firewall and internet connection, so as to better accommodate blended in-person and digital opportunities. And finally, we did so by purchasing a storage shed, so as to better utilize our space in our building.
These investments were worthy to further the mission of Jesus through Shepherd of the Cross. But when it comes to the core of who we are and what it means to come home together, ultimately, we simply need Christ and we need each other. So if all we need is Christ and each other, here's the deal, shepherds. There is no limit to the places and ways in which we can come home together. We can come home at church, while eating lunch with friends. We can come home to the familiarity of our individual families, in a Bible study group, or we can come home as we reach out in service to those in our community. Point being, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, that is a space where Christ is already dwelling with you, forming sacred community.
So going into 2022, here's our twofold invitation to you. Imagine with us how we may be called to inhabit new dwelling places as a part of our ministry.
And as you imagine, open your eyes to what is already happening around you. Treat each situation as a place in which Christ is coming to meet with you, and a place where Christ is coming to meet those with whom you are with.
Wherever you are, that is a space where Christ can dwell with you and create sacred community. And with that perspective, there is absolutely no limit to the places and the ways in which we can come home together.